I've talked before about Larry Krasner on this channel. He just recently started as district attorney for Philadelphia. His campaign was financed by George Soros. He has pledged he would be the most progressive prosecutor of all time. Recently, a news article came out detailing some of his insane policies. Policy number 1, everyone gets probation. Larry Krasner has set a policy that prosecutors can't seek any jail time in any case that is non-violent, non-sexual, or a theft less than $50,000. This policy can't be deviated from unless Larry Krasner himself personally signs off on it. Given that Krasner runs one of America's largest prosecutors' offices and is always going to be incredibly busy, I imagine very few of these sign-offs are going to happen. This is absolutely bonkers to me. So basically, thievery is legal in Philly as long as you don't go over $50,000. If you sell drugs, all that can happen to you is probation. Burglarize someone's house, worst thing that can happen to you is they put you on probation. It also apparently doesn't matter how many times you've done this before. You may have 50 previous burglary convictions and you're still going to get put on probation. If you live in Philly, I implore you, move your family out of there. You don't have property rights anymore. When the criminals start realizing this, you're done for. The collapse of rule of law in America starts in Philadelphia. Policy number 2, shoplifting isn't a crime anymore. So if I owned a store in Philly, I'd already be extremely concerned that nobody could ever get jail time for stealing from my store. They could only get probation. Of course, that is until I learned that Larry Krasner has effectively legalized shoplifting as long as the items stolen come out to under $500. Again, this can't be emphasized enough. If you're in Philly, you can steal from stores as long as you don't take too much. It is basically legal to do so. You won't be prosecuted. Help yourself to anything you want. Just make sure it's under $500. If you're a shop owner in Philadelphia, you just lost your right to the pursuit of happiness as promised in the Constitution and Declaration of Independence. You don't have property rights anymore. People are free to steal your stuff without consequence. The government will not protect you. Good luck convincing people to spend money on what they can take for free. You have no control over this. The criminals control your business now. Part of what makes me so angry about this is this will fucking destroy the economy in states and cities outside of Philly. Gangs of people are going to start mass shoplifting. This stuff is going to flood the marketplace in other cities. Retailers have to buy their products from manufacturers. How retail works is they mark up the prices of the items they buy and then sell them for a profit. Well, now they are going to be competing against retailers whose stock was bought for pennies on the dollar from the various theft rings that are going to arise in Philadelphia. This policy is going to cause economic devastation on a massive scale. Check out my new intro, and then I'm going to go over the next 5 insane Larry Krasner policies. Policy number 3, shaming prosecutors to not seek prison time. Okay, so the economy is going to be completely fucked by Larry Krasner. At least people will still be held accountable for violent crimes, sex crimes, and theft crimes where more than $50,000 was stolen though, right? Well, sadly, I wouldn't count on it. Imagine you're filling your car with gas and a guy comes up to you with a gun. He demands you hand over your wallet and the ring on your finger. This is your wedding ring, and it has a lot of sentimental value to you. So you refuse, and in response, he pistol whips you in the face, knocks you to the ground. He then forcibly takes your wedding ring and wallet. Larry Krasner has a policy that if a prosecutor is going to recommend a jail sentence, they must justify the cost. This would take place at the time where the defendant was being sentenced, in which case the judge would ask the prosecutor what sentence they're recommending. Once again, prosecutors can only recommend a jail sentence if it is a violent, sexual, or theft over $50,000. In the case of you having your wedding ring stolen, It is a violent crime. You were pistol whipped. So the prosecutor can indeed recommend jail time. However, he has to comply with this Larry Krasner policy. The article indicates it costs $42,000 to incarcerate someone in a Pennsylvania prison. If the prosecutor wants to ask for 1 year jail, he will have to inform the judge that it will cost $42,000 to impose this. And then he has to justify that it is nonetheless worth it to send this person to prison for a year. So not only does the prosecutor have to argue against the defense attorney, but he also has to argue against himself now. If the prosecutor fails to mention the cost when he's recommending a prison term, he violates Larry Krasner's policy and he could be fired. This crazy policy doesn't even make sense from a cost-saving perspective. The $42,000 figure is mostly going to be accounting for health insurance costs. However, most people who commit crimes already have free health care provided by the federal government. So the taxpayers are already paying most of this $42,000 figure, along with the many other welfare benefits that these people receive but lose while they're in prison. Policy number 4, ending cash bail. Larry Krasner's justice system already seems like a complete joke. The vast majority of criminals can't receive any sort of punishment other than probation. For those that the prosecution can seek prison time, they're strongly discouraged from doing so. What could make this even more absurd? How about making the criminal justice system completely optional for most criminals? If you don't want to put up with the whole boring court dates and being put on probation for the 19th time thing, how about a policy that lets you just not bother with any of this altogether? Krasner has forbid his prosecutors from asking the court to hold people in custody on bonds for many different crimes. This isn't the case for crimes like rape or murder, but many other serious crimes are included. Let's use home burglary as an example. So imagine you are a guy who likes to break into people's houses and steal their stuff. You get caught and immediately released because the prosecutor's office can't seek cash bail. So you stop showing up to court. What are the consequences? Well, nothing. The prosecutor can't ask, by policy, that you ever be held on a bond. So you might as well just ignore the criminal charges against you altogether. Nothing will ever happen to you for doing so. Policy number 5. Let everyone out of prison. It's not bad enough that Larry Krasner has destroyed the rule of law in Philadelphia as it currently stands. He wants to go backward and start reevaluating all the cases of people who have already been convicted. So while previous prosecutors actually did their job and protected the people of Philadelphia, all of that work is about to be undone. Larry Krasner will assemble a team that will likely apply all of his insane pro-criminal policies to previous cases that have already been resolved. After all, his office should have a lot of resources available to itself, given how he is giving pretty much everyone probation and is making compliance with court directives optional. Policy number 6. These policies come from public defenders. How does Larry Krasner come up with these ridiculous policies? Does George Soros dictate these things to him? As much as I want to believe that, the truth is actually far worse. Larry Krasner apparently has a committee with the public defender's office. He asks these defense attorneys, who are lawyers who are ethically bound to get the absolute best outcome possible for their clients, and he asks them how can he adopt policies to reduce incarceration. The legal system in our country is supposed to be an adversarial system. The idea is that two sides will battle it out in court, and the outcome of this battle will be a just outcome. The system has been destroyed in Philly. If the prosecutor will not be an adversary to the defense will always win. This is exactly the sort of thing the adversarial system was created to avoid happening. Defense attorneys aren't going to offer good policy advice to Larry Krasner because they are obligated to do whatever their client wants, not what makes sense as the best public policy. Notice that Krasner doesn't bother to consult with law enforcement during these meetings. Law enforcement is not a part of this committee. He also seems to not care about how the community, economy, or crime victims will be affected by his policies. His only goal is to reduce incarceration. Well, if that's your goal, Larry, why not just disband the prosecutor's office altogether? Why even keep up the facade that you're trying to do something about crime? Policy number 7. Immigrants have immunity to commit crimes. I've talked about this several times in previous videos. Upon getting elected, Larry Krasner hired an immigration attorney. This immigration attorney has a power to veto charges against immigrants or illegal immigrants if filing charges against those individuals could cause deportation. For example, an illegal immigrant may molest a child, but because charging them would lead to that immigrant's deportation, Larry Krasner's office won't file the charge. This effectively gives legal and illegal immigrants more rights than U.S. citizens. They basically have immunity to commit most crimes. Krasner is not the first or only district attorney to do this. Unlike many other of these wacko, bizarre policies of his, this one is actually pretty commonplace in sanctuary cities. Policy number 8, government-sanctioned heroin use. With the opiate crisis at the worst that it's ever been, one of the dumbest things a prosecutor could do is normalize using heroin. That is, of course, what Larry Krasner's new policy does. He wants to set up government-safe injection sites. These are places where heroin users are not arrested or forcibly committed into drug rehab that might actually salvage their life. Instead, they are permitted to use heroin and get high. This is the perfect place for people to indulge in drug addictions in secret so their parents, their husband or wife, or their children will not find out about it. From a policy perspective, this will only make the opioid crisis worse. It will make using heroin appear to be normal and just another public health issue. Prosecutors are supposed to protect the community from drug addiction, not encourage it. It's a disgrace that Krasner would encourage something like this. Larry Krasner is cancer to the rule of law in Philly. It'll be a different city 4 years from now in a very bad way. If you live there, I encourage you to move your family out. You're not safe in that city. George Soros has collapsed rule of law and completely degraded the institution of the prosecutor. Please consider subscribing to my channel. I offer a unique conservative view on crime, the rule of law, and civic nationalism coming from someone who works in the trenches as a criminal prosecutor. Please enable notifications and feel free to leave a comment.